blank paper, sponges, and Play-Doh have to do with babies' brains? Well, stick around and I'll tell you. Consider yourself hooked. For years, developmental scientists have been trying to understand the immense growth and change that happens in babies' brains early in life. And I mentioned this before, but babies are born seeking out relationships with adults. In fact, babies are dependent on adults to survive, and they gather a lot of really important information about their surroundings through their relationships. And over the course of evolution, infants have also come to expect certain types of information during particular periods of development. For example, babies are born with basic visual pathways set up in their brains, but they're dependent on receiving visual input from the surrounding environment in order to strengthen and solidify those visual pathways. Based on the visual input that babies receive from their surroundings, their brains go through periods of synaptogenesis and pruning. But if babies have early vision impairments due to things like cataracts, the lack of that visual input early in life can actually cause permanent vision problems. Even if cataracts are removed later in life and their vision is perfectly healthy, without that important period of visual input, the brain's vision system never recovers. In fact, to preserve typical vision, it's essential for corrective surgeries for some types of cataracts to happen as soon as possible in a baby's life. Sometimes, scientists call these periods of development of things like the visual system critical or sensitive periods. These terms refer to time frames in development, when certain types of information are expected or needed in order for an attribute to develop typically. Processes like visual development are often referred to as experience expectant processes because the brain is expecting certain types of visual information. Language learning is a similar process. Because of our reliance on social interactions and relationships with others for survival, the development of language has become essential. As a result, young children have become experts in learning to understand and communicate language very quickly and accurately. For more about how children learn language, and because I don't want to recreate the wheel, I'll link below to a great video by the Ling Space on the basics of early language acquisition. In that video, they discuss that babies are born with the ability to take in information about language, but are not predisposed to learn certain types of languages. And this makes sense, right? I mean, if you were born in Japan and then at age 1 started speaking French, that wouldn't be very helpful. So here's the cool thing. Some people, myself included, would argue that language development is actually an example of both experience expectant learning, so our brains expecting to hear language sounds, and a process that scientists call experience dependent learning. Experience dependent learning is just like it sounds, dependent on experience. So though babies are born expecting certain language sounds, they're not born expecting to hear certain languages. The development of specific languages is dependent upon the languages that the baby is exposed to early in life. So though we're born to expect certain broad categories of information, it's our specific experiences that build our unique brains. Man, aren't babies' brains cool? So coming back to the question that started this whole video, what does a blank piece of paper, a sponge, and some Play-Doh have to do with brain development? Well, we used to think that babies' brains were like blank slates, completely empty at birth, waiting to be written on. Then we thought that babies' brains were more like sponges, just waiting to soak up the information from the world around them. But now I find it's best to think about babies' brains like Play-Doh or clay. They have a form to begin with, but they're just waiting to be molded and shaped by experience. And this process doesn't stop at age 1, 2, 10, 25, or ever really. Your brain is constantly changing. It has to, or you wouldn't remember the name of that person you met at VidCon last week, or have been able to memorize the entire marriage proposal dialogue between Mr. Darcy and Lizzie in the A&E version of Pride and Prejudice when you were 12.
You merely spared me any concern I might have felt in refusing you had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner.
It's just the degree to which your brain can change that decreases over time. Remember those sensitive periods I talked about? They certainly play a role in how moldable or changeable your brain is, but there's a lot more to it too. But I'll talk more about that process, neuroplasticity, in another video. Shout out to all my new viewers and subscribers, many of whom I met at VidCon. Y'all are awesome! Yay VidCon! So what questions do you have about child development? Let me know in comments. Thumbs up if you liked it. I'd love it if you came back. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.